Hey, how's the sound today? Test, test, test. Restream is good times today. Apparently it wouldn't let me start the stream. Okay, I might do a quick thing on the TMC 2209. Somebody was having trouble with it and I just want to try something out. But if you have questions, let me know, because this week's been busy and I haven't had a lot of time to go through other things to do for tutorials today during the live stream. Let me see if I can find one of these boards. Let's see. Those are 2208s. But let me check on the chat before I get going here. Apparently I had a slight issue with starting stream today, so I also made the mistake of trying to make hot chocolate at the same time that I was prepping. So both of them didn't go very well. I'll show you the hot chocolate for the moment. Hopefully I don't spill it on the board. It's more hot than usual, we'll say. Almost like cheese. Apparently I'm having trouble finding the TMC 2209s, and I've got dozens of them. Wow. This is what I get for cleaning up. Here we go. So here's the TMC 2209. Now the person has a problem where I think thermal cutback is occurring, which means that it cuts the power so that it can reduce the temperature. So we're gonna experiment and see if we can cause it. Hopefully I won't damage this board in the process. But let me lock the board down real quick here. If you haven't noticed, I've been trying to clean up the surface a little. But I have to go back to my previous waxing where I make a new wax for this table. So basically just walnut oil and honeycomb. But let me pull these out while I'm at it here. So essentially we're just configuring it for its configuration. And since I've covered it so many times, we all pretty much memorized that the jumper goes there for this configuration for the TMC 2209, and then the board matches up with the colors. So the next thing you have to do is attach the cable, which is right here. And we'll do sensorless homing, so that won't be a big issue. But I need to attach the power as well. And because it's safer to use ferrule connectors, I use them. This also avoids damaging your equipment later on. Or at least that's what I tell myself. So there's ground, and voltage is going in here. So I'll tighten that down. So now that we have that configured, we have to also make sure that we have the right power supply on my side, because I don't want to hook up the wrong thing. So I'm going to put this off to the side, and we're going to check to make sure that we're set to direct power, but it's not, so we'll set it to USB power with these two pins. This is just so we can actually load the firmware. If I can actually see the pins, there we go. So let me run a cable to it to actually power it up here. There we go. And then what we're going to need to do is actually load the firmware, which I didn't have configured yet, so I'll take care of that. So essentially you have to download the firmware and then unzip it from Marlin's website. And I've showed this so many times that I'm just doing it off on the side so you don't see it, but I'll bring up VS Code in about 2 seconds. There we go. So inside VS Code, we're gonna actually open the firmware in a second. So I just have to make it so you can see what I'm doing. So give me a second to slide this over to the right screen. Whoops. Okay, now you'll be able to, in theory, see what I'm doing, I hope. Whoop, it's pointed to the wrong screen. That's awesome. There we go. Okay. So over here, you're going to click on Open Folder. You're going to go to the Downloads, Marlin 2.0, Marlin 2.0 Select Folder. And the person, I believe, is using possibly the same board, maybe a different one, but the process is the same with the exception of the board name. So you're going to go to the Marlin folder, the source folder, the core folder, boards.h, and you'll search in this case for SKR, and it's the turbo in this case. So this is the regular one, which has this chipset, and then the turbo's down here. Now they may be using a different board and they'd have to search on it, but each one of these equates to a category. So this case, it's LPC 1769. So once you have that, you can actually leave this, and then you can go over to your configuration.h, search on motherboard, paste it over the ramps, which is the default configuration, set your port to -1 so that you can actually upload. And then we have to set up the stepper, which is real simple. You just search on A4988. And inside here, you're going to remove the comments for the axis that you're working with. Next, you're going to copy the stepper type and paste it over the A4988. And down here, I've talked about this many times, so I'm going to skip it today. But I'm going to go to Configuration Advanced and show you what happened. So I'm going to search on 800. And in this particular case, the person was set to 850. So we're going to set ours to 900 just to exaggerate the problem. But we're going to search on TMC debug and see if we can cause an actual issue. So I'm going to remove the comment there for debug, and then I have to find the second one, which is right here. And that'll allow us to turn on debugging with the G code M122. Now we also have to set up sensorless homing. So I'm going to search on sensorless. And it's actually up. One more. So I need to remove the comment here. And then I need to set the sensitivity for the axis that we're using, which is the x-axis, to 125 for sensitivity. And that's for the TMC 2209. So we're all set there. So I'm going to skip back over to Platform IO. I know the default environment in this particular case is LPC 1769. So I'm going to do a quick clean and then build. And so the build we could probably do as an upload, but I wanted to do a build so I can show you the drive and hopefully not a failure. So it looks like I had a failure here. It says that it can't create something for SPI. We're not using SPI. So let's do a clean again. And try and do a build just to see if it works and doesn't fail. And I'll check on the chat. Oh, it's a little quiet today. So inside here it looks like it's now building. And it's completed. So I'm going to look over here at this folder for the USB drive just to make sure there's nothing there. And now I'm going to do an upload real quick. And now it's on the drive. So I'm going to remove the USB and then place it back in. So I'll show you what I'm doing. Take it out, place it back in. You'll see a flashing light over here probably, and then the drive will pop back up. Now we can check the drive real quick. So if I go over to my desktop for a second, well, let me pull up the drive. So there's the drive, and you can see that it just loaded. So we'll go back over to the desktop for a second. Take the power out. We're going to move the jumper over to here, put this back in, and then we're going to power it. So the first test is really simple. We're going to go over to Pronterface. And inside Pronterface, we're just going to see if we can connect to it. Now, Pronterface might not show up initially, so I'll show you how you can check that. So go to Device Manager. Inside Device Manager, If I can pull it over quick enough. There we go. It's COM port 13 that we're looking for. So I'm going to go over to here, say 13, and then connect. And now the printer is now online. So we'll go back into Printerface with it on the desk. And we'll try and move 10 and see what happens. So it moves. And it moves the other way. Now we can try home. So it works. So I'm going to move this over 100. And now I'm going to turn on debug. So it's M122. So right now it's showing what's going on, that it's okay. So let's try moving this around a little bit and seeing if we can cause it to fail. Now it's going to probably take a little bit of movement to get it to fail, if it fails. So what we can do is go back into the actual firmware and increase the value. But I'm not exactly sure of their configuration that it's causing it to fail. But a thermal cutback will eventually occur if this is moving constantly. It might be hard to cause right now for me, but during a print it's easy. See if we can get something to happen, otherwise we're gonna have to really crank it up. Now those busy processing might be part of the cause, but we're not seeing all of the debug. But you can see the temperature is rising, or at least I think that's temperature. Let's see if we can see it up here. If I can get this to go up. Oh, that's hard to read. But I believe it's temperature. Let's see if I can force it here. It's a highly stable driver, so I believe those echo busy processing might have something to do with what's going on. So there might be a G code, I forgot what it is to set this, but we can always change it in the actual firmware and see if we can cause it. So I'm going to go over to the firmware because this is not working. I'm actually trying to make it fail, which is really odd, but that's the point. So I'm going to unplug it for a moment, and then I'm going to move the jumper over. This is just the way I like to load it, but when you're running it, you always have to be on the power. So hang on a second, sorry about that. So if I go over to VS Code, we're just going to find the value for 800 again and make this change. So we'll go to Advanced Configuration and we'll search on 800. There we go. So we're going to change this to 950 and see if we can get it to fail. Let's go for an even 1000. And we'll upload this again. Now it is going the wrong way, so if you want to make it home on the left, then you would search on inverting. And down here, you'd say the direction is true. I'll reload it real quick just so you can see what I'm doing. And this will change the homing direction. So it'll make it more Cartesian-like. So as soon as this finishes, I'll unplug it real quick, plug it back in. So I'll show you what I'm doing. So I'm going to unplug it, plug it back in, give that a second. Now I'll unplug it again, move the jumper. If you don't move the jumper, you get really strange results. The only way I know that is because I got really strange results. Okay, it's powered back up, so let's go over to Pronterface. Inside Pronterface, you want to reconnect, and we'll try homing. And now it homes in the opposite direction. Let's turn on the debug. See if it gets crazy on us. So I think I'm unable to make it fail on this board. It might be something unique to his board, but he was rather high on the milliamps. He was at 850, so it might be something also about my setup being different. His motors might be different than mine. But the closest I can get to is busy processing. But he also may have turned on, there, let me show you what he possibly could have turned on. So inside VS Code, if you go to, let's see, I actually have to scroll down because I don't remember what it's called, but there's a way to change the actual way that it works. So you could turn off Stealth Chop, which will give you spread cycle mode. That may cause an issue, but it's not designed for this board that we're working. Well, it is, sorry. So let's try that and see if it works. So I'm just going to load the firmware this way to make it quick. But it might fail because I'm connected to the printer right now, so we'll see in about 2 seconds. Right now I'm connected in Pronterface. Well, it loaded, kind of like that. So let's disconnect in Pronterface. And I'm going to pull out the plug. Then I'm going to reinsert the plug. Give it a second to load. And then connect. So now that we're connected, I'll turn on debugging. And I'll try and move it first to home. It's a lot louder. That's because spread cycle is what's running it. But it doesn't run as smooth to me. So I don't think that's causing it either. So let's go back over and see if we can cause something else to happen. So there's another setting down here someplace. Hybrid threshold. Let's try that. See what happens. double check to see if it's loading. Whoop, I didn't realize I wasn't in VS Code for you guys. Sorry, it was loading. But let's double check over here. It loaded. So we'll go back over to the bench for a second. Pull the power. Plug it back in. Go back over to Chronorface and see what happens. Hopefully we're not going to damage the board here. So it looks like it's still okay. So let's try homing. Seems a lot quieter. So let's see if we can mess around with the speed, because I think it can go faster. So I'm going to disconnect. I'm going to go back over to VS Code. Inside VS Code, I'm going to see if we can make this even faster. Obviously, I'm not using hybrid threshold the way it should be. The driver will switch to spread cycle when the stepper speed is over the hybrid threshold. Well, I don't think we'll ever get over the hybrid threshold. Okay, well, let's see what happens. I might have to lower this number, actually. So let me check on the chat, because I know I haven't been... M906. We'll try that in a second. So I'm gonna power it down for a second. Plug it back in. We'll go back over to Chronorface. We'll connect. We'll do M122, and then we'll do the other G code. It says what the current is. Let's try moving it and seeing what happens. For some reason I can't get it hot enough. That's awesome. So let me disconnect again. Go over to VS Code. Try this out again. So let's lower the number to 10 and then reload it. There was a time when I could get this to actually break. I might have to go back and look at my old stream or tutorial on this. So let me pop out the power. Power it back up. Go to Chronorface. Inside Chronorface. Let's try this again. M122. Current still says 1,000, which is correct. So let's oh, that's real noisy. it changes the sensitivity when you change the other stats. It looks like it failed too. That's awesome. So I guess that's not a good idea. So let's disconnect and see if we can change it back. It might be the current's too high. So let's change the current. So search on 800. And let's see if we can crank this back down and make it normal. It might be that the spread cycle or whatever we just changed might be the reason. But we're not going to be able to upload probably, but let's see what happens because it said printer halted, so it might have failed. Well, looks like it uploaded, so let's see what happened. Whoops, sorry I didn't let you see that all. I was in VS Code and I forgot to change it so you could see it. So apparently I can't see the F drive, which it's not good. So let's try that again. I'm gonna disconnect real quick here, or connect. Doesn't want to connect, so let's disconnect the power. Probably gonna have to reload the firmware. Let's check to see if it changed. So 632, 635, it may have changed, but let's go back over to VS Code for a second. And try this upload again. And it looks like it worked that time, so let's double check. Yep. So we'll go over to the desktop, unplug it, plug it back in so it loads. Go to Printerface and reconnect. Let's do the M122. Looks like it's okay. Let's try the other one. Current should be 800, I believe. It is. Let's try moving it again. Guessing it's going to have trouble when it homes. Okay, at least we know why it's having trouble. So it's that one setting for, I think, spread cycle or something. Let's go look and see what it is. So I'm going to disconnect. It's already crashed, so I'm going to power cycle this real quick. Going to go over to VS Code, and we know what's causing the homing issue now. So if we scroll down here, what caused the homing issue probably is this, or this. So first we'll try this and see if it works, but it's throwing off the sensitivity. And I'll check on the chat while this is going on. Ebo.org, how's it going? How are you? Let's go back over to Workbench real quick. Remove the power, power it back up. This will load the firmware. And then we'll test it out again. So we'll connect. We'll move 200 millimeters. Then we'll try and home. So that's what's affecting the homing. But apparently I can't cause the error. So not sure what to do on that one. Let's see if we can cause it to do something weird. Well, doesn't look like I'm able to cause the issue. So it might be something in his settings that we're not sure of. But apparently it's not working out the way I thought. I'm doing well. Had a little bit of car trouble in the week. Apparently my Mustang's fuel pump died. But it's been dying apparently for 3 years, and this week it made itself clear that it didn't want to work anymore. But now I can drive again, so I don't have to walk to work. That's why I appear a little bit tired after the work day is over, so. But let's see if we can do some questions you want to see, because this one I can't seem to cause it to fail. Either I'm doing something very, very right, or I don't know how to do it wrong. Which is a very confusing statement. But I think the board that he was using was an E3 dip. Maybe we can try and cause that to happen. So, if you don't have any immediate questions, we could try that. This is a little warm. It's not hot, but let me get this out of the way. And I'm not sure if I have the E3 dip on the table yet, so let's take a look. So this is the E3 dip. I'm actually going to take it out of its container. Let me just find the right tool for it. There we go. It's actually the last one I took. This one's got strange screw holes because it's designed for the Creality. This is one you can just drop in place. So that's the board. So let me lock this down into place. Whoop. Just have to get something off it that I didn't realize was there. I can't remember how to load firmware on this. We might have to take the drive out, but we'll see. And I'll zoom in so you can see this better. And I'll try and focus it so it doesn't look blurry. So this board I haven't set up in a very long time. So we have to figure out what the actual jumper positions are. I'm guessing they're going to be similar because I already have it set. But let's give it a try and see if we can find it. So I'm going to go over to the web browser for a second. And I'm going to search on BTT GitHub. And I'm going to look for, what is it? E3 dip. And this should bring us to the manual. Inside the manual, let's see what we've got here. That looks like the board mostly. It's been like 2 years since I've had this board, so I don't know if this has changed. So we know where the power is now. We need the in power, which is right here. And we need to know if it's positive or negative. And I already marked the board, so this is voltage, this is ground. Might be able to check that up here too. If they did their diagrams the way that normally are done. I think squares are normally voltage or ground, excuse me. But it's written right here. So we know what that is. Let's see if we can find the actual information on the steppers. So there's stepper. Apparently my Chinese is not very good, so you'll have to forgive me. But it doesn't say anything about UART. Or am I just up? I'm sorry. It does say something about UART right here. So we have the right jumper. So we're going to go back over and insert the actual stepper. The reason I check that is because I don't like replacing boards. So I always check even though I've checked 1,000 times. Just because I might forget sometime. And that's the other reason that I actually mark these on top with colors. So that I don't plug it in backwards and then while I'm talking to you, smoke rises out of it. Because I know that's, it can be funny, but it gets expensive quick. So I'm not going to power it just yet. I got to find the actual data cable for this. Otherwise, we're going to have to load through USB. And I might have stored it behind me. Or I may have not stored it at all. Let's see what we got here. Here we go. So, I believe that's the right cable. Let's see what happens. So that plugs in there. Unfortunately, I can't reach my hub, so I'm going to run a line to it. And the camera might click out again because it's getting close to 30 minutes from the last time. Now, when you daisy chain cables like this, while it might work, it also might be more unreliable. But let's see if we actually have a drive that shows up. Actually, we probably won't, because there's a problem. So the problem right now is that there's no drive in there. And the drive that might be in there might not be the right one after I put one in. Let me just find one. So here's a drive. I'm not sure of where it came from. It's probably not designed for this board, but that's fine. I'm going to plug it in. And then we're going to see if we actually have a drive. So I'll go over to the desktop. I'll check to see if there's an actual drive. Now this is the drive that I always have plugged in, so I'm going to unplug that. So it's not showing up. So what we need to do is actually see if it'll show up after loading firmware manually. So we have to go back over. I'm going to pop out the drive that was in there. I'm going to pop this out. You usually don't want to pop that out while it's powered, by the way. That's just me showing you a bad habit. I'm going to drop it into here, and then we'll plug it into the computer. And we'll see what we have or if it works. So if I go over to the desktop, I can now see a drive. It's got firmware on it, but I'm going to delete that because I don't know where it's from. And then for this, we're going to have to find the E3 dip. So it's really simple. All our settings are the same, essentially. So we're going to go over to source, core, boards.h, search on E3 underscore DIP, I believe. And we want to make sure that it's version 1, which this one says. Now this might get confusing very quickly because there might be 2 different chips for it, because they seem to do this, which to me indicates there might be more than one chip type. So first I'm going to change motherboard, then we'll come back to this folder because we need to check something. So we'll go to configuration.h, search on motherboard, paste it here. Then we're going to have to go back to, let me see if it's here, to boards.h. Check the category it's under, STM32. And it was the E3 dip, which is right here, I believe. So let's search on E3 dip again in platformio.ini. This might get messy very quick. So do a search here for it. It says E3 dip. So we're going to take this as our default environment, and hopefully it works. It may not. We'll go to the top, we'll paste it here, and we'll do just a normal build to see what's going on. It may fail because we built something else a second ago. And of course it happens right as I say it. So I'm going to trash the first one. That basically empties out the .pio folder up here. And then I'll try and build it again. If it fails a second time, probably means something's going on. So let's see what we got here. Okay, it's probably not working for that setting. So let's do a search again on E3 dip. So it's showing up once. There's one for USB here. So I don't know if that's the mass storage one. So let's see what happens. It might be that I have to do something else different, because it's been forever since I've worked with this. Okay. There also might be an issue with it actually building in the first place. So let's try this. Nope, doesn't work. So let's try this. Actually, I got another idea. I'm going to go over to the board. And we're going to confirm what's on it. So I'm going to move this over a little just so you can see. We're going to zoom in. Now you might not be able to make out what the board type is for the chipset. I can't make it out. So maybe that's a horrible idea. So we'll zoom back out. And we'll go over to their website and see if there's anything on it. So I'm going to see if I can find a way to cheat and show you another way to think about this. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to go to firmware. Then I'm going to go to not the Maple drive, but to here. I'm going to go to Marlin, configuration.h. I'm just going to verify that we've got the right thing here. I don't really care about the speed because that can vary. So I'll go back over to VS Code and confirm it. Inside VS Code, I'm going to go to configuration.h. And there's the issue. I dropped a P. So I'll show you what I'm talking about. I just have to add it. But then I'm going to go back over to the browser, or the desktop, excuse me. And you can see what the mistake was. So that's one way to confirm your mistake. Now I'm going to go back and fix the platform IO. So if I go over here, I'm going to see if I can back into it. There we go. Let's try and do a build again. And it looks a little bit better. So I'll check on the chat because you guys are probably screaming that while I was talking away. Okay, maybe not, but that was my mistake. So I dropped one letter when I copied it. So that's good. Now in order to set this up so we can copy it off, we're going to go .pio build. We're going to go into the folder. We're going to find the bin file, right click, and we're going to say reveal in Explorer. We're then going to right click and we're going to send it to the D drive. And that's right here. So after we're done with that, we're going to then go back to our desktop. I'm going to pop out the drive. I'm going to place the drive in here, and we're going to let the board power on with USB power and hopefully load it. It looks like it's flashing over here, and it looks like it's completed. Now I hear a drive showing up, so let's check the computer. So over here, I don't see it, which is horrible. Notice how we don't see the drive? That's okay though, because I'll show you something about that in a second. If we go over to Device Manager, we might be able to get an answer. It might not be the answer we like, but we'll get one. So we have COM port 3 now. Earlier we had, what, 13 or something? Or let's see what it was. Yeah, it was 13. So let's take out the 13 and make it a 3. Try and connect. And it says printer now is online. So it sounds like it worked. Granted, it's not showing us a USB drive, which we can live with. But I'm going to plug it in. So let's just see what I'm doing here. And this is known as the smoke test, because if we have it set up wrong, it'll smoke. So looks like it's powered. So let's go back over to Pronterface and see how well it works. So I'm going to move it 100. That's a little fast, and it's also not the same distance we're used to. So let's try homing it. Okay, so there is an issue. This issue I've seen before on the SKR version 1.4, and it was the jumper. So if we look at this board and we look carefully, I don't see a jumper for power. So let's go back to the manual. I'm going to power this down because that's not going to home. This might be one of the reasons I didn't do a lot of tutorials on it. So let's go over and look at the manual. So inside the manual, we did change this. Our first serial port is not 2. But they're also doing -1 for the second serial port. So there might be something going on with the LCD here, or they don't know how to configure it. Usually I do -1. So we'll see if there's some other reason in here. But let's check their manual, because I think this is a jumper issue. Normally you see this with the mistakes that I've made in the past on other boards. So let's see, we have the manual. Let's click on that. And then inside the manual, oh, apparently I'm clicking on the wrong thing here. There we go. So I'm looking for a jumper. These say SPI. I can't see a jumper on them. So it could be that maybe I did the wrong jumper over here. But that doesn't seem logical. So I'm going to scroll through here. I'm looking for anything that's making reference to a USB jumper. No, we got the right jumper there. Okay, that's really confusing. So next thing we could do is actually change the COM port. Don't want to do it, but we could try it. But let's check the wiki and see if there's any bugs against this. Let's see. Let's do a search on TMC 2209. End stops don't function. And it looks like they've got 2 issues on it. Sounded like people are having similar issues. Essentially, you should be able to drop any of these configurations into the other and then test it. But it's almost like it wants a jumper for the USB versus direct power. Something tells me I'm not going to get the solution to this problem. Apparently the other people have solutions of returning it. Wow, it's like I can't find an answer to this unless somebody's already experienced it. Yeah, isn't that great? Apparently it's not very well written. I have an idea what the problem is, but I have no way to correct it. because I can show you this issue on other boards. So I'm going to take a look at the board even closer. Maybe I should look at the pinouts diagram, maybe. Let's see, hardware, pinout. See if there's anything that says USB here. That says USB right there. But I'm not going to jump those two together, and I don't think I can if I wanted to, because I don't think there's pins. Yeah, there are no pins. See if USB is written any other place. No, that's loading firmware. It's TFT, EXP. That's SPI. Although SPI is marked in two places. Oh, it's Motor SPI, excuse me. Yeah, it's probably data plus, data minus. But I thought it was pins because these are all pins. That's why it's confusing to me. And there's no pins except for probably right near it. Yeah. There's pins right behind it, but those are so tiny it would be painful to connect to. What I'm looking for is a jumper pin for VCC versus USB. Maybe like a slider pin or a slider resistor. One of the flat ones. But I don't see anything. So I almost want to say it's a poor design. And don't use any kind of advanced stepper on this board. That's probably why I didn't make any tutorials on it. But let's try a different stepper and see what happens. So let me just power cycle the camera real quick. Yeah, one's probably TX and the other one's probably RX for data. Or D plus is TX and D minus is receive. But I'm going to bring it up so you can see what I'm doing on the desktop here. I'm going to try a different stepper and see what the results are. Notice how the board is being powered by USB. It might be that if we hook up a panel, it might work. We could always try that as well. So let me find a panel. I want to see if this works. There we go. So I got a USB panel. We're going to try it without the actual connection for... Let me grab a better panel. Or the same panel without the actual patching on it. So we're going to have to look this up, and then we'll have to load the firmware, then disconnect the USB so we can run off direct power, and then move the end stop back and forth. So here's the actual panel. I'm trying to get it in a place where you can see everything. I know it's kind of reflective because I got a lot of light shooting down on it. So let's go to the manual for a second. Might be their design is designed to run off the panel, which is kind of horrible because I usually run off Prowner face, which makes it hard for me to demonstrate if I can't find a way to do it. So let's go back in here, go to the manual. We probably could have done it out of the pinout diagram that I was just looking at. There's the TFT. I'm guessing that's ground, but the pinout probably would tell us better. There we go. It probably is reset. So where is it? It's select. SS. Huh. DET. Detect? Well, there's one way to figure it out, and that's plug it in. I know that's a horrible thing to say. So I'm going to go over the desktop so you can see what I'm doing. So here's the cable. I'm not sure how to connect it yet. So I'm going to connect it one way. If it doesn't power on, I'll connect it another. But I'm going to use USB for power. So it's either this way or 180 degrees the other. So it's not powering on. So we'll flip it. Plug it in again. We get the reset pin in. Do it again. And now it powers up. Sorry about the strange logo. That's a previous stream. And I'll put this where you can actually see what I'm doing. Whoop. So it says no printer attached, so we're gonna have to make a mod. I think it's number 2. So let me go back to VS Code and fix that. So in VS Code, we're gonna go to the serial port for config.h. We're gonna change or remove the comment for this. And we're gonna change it to 2 because I think they may have gotten them backwards. And we'll see what happens. So I'm going to do a build real quick. And while that's going on, I'm going to pop out the USB. I'm going to pop out the actual SD card. And I'm going to put it in the converter. Then I'll plug this in. Then I'll go to .pio. I'll find the actual build, right click, reveal in Explorer, right click again, send to the D drive. Double check the D drive, it's now there. So we'll go back to the desktop. Pop out the drive, put it in here. And we're going to use USB for power again. And just see if we're able to connect. We may have to change the speed. Okay, it doesn't look like it's working just yet. So we go to Menu, Settings, and Connection. Baud rate, 250, enter, back. And it's working now. So what I'm going to do is disconnect this. And then I'm going to connect the actual power and see if this works correctly. And of course, I got to move this over so that it's out of the way. Then I'll hold it up. So let's try the homing again because that was the issue. So I gotta find it because I'm slow. Menu. There's something about homing here someplace, hopefully. I did make custom menus on this, so that's why everything looks goofy. So this is not gonna be fun for me. Movement. Let's see, where's move? Let's increase that. Okay, that's normal, or it appears to be normal. Now normally there's a home, because it says home, and then home X. So apparently the way to fix this problem is don't connect your USB. And that was silly of me to take a while to figure that out, but it wasn't obvious, but it was obvious. And apparently I had to think about it. So maybe we should try other steppers, and maybe I will make some tutorials on this now that I remember what I'm doing. So does anybody have any other questions today? Well, does anybody have any questions today? Okay, well, I'll be doing a Saturday live stream at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but I think I'm gonna cut it short early today so I can sit down and start making tutorials on this so that people can actually understand what I'm talking about. Because I think this board scared me off because of the USB issue. And apparently you guys just helped me through it in a weird kind of way. So I'll start recording tutorials on this again. I just have to take notes on what I just said because apparently I'm a little fatigued. So let me know in Discord if you have any questions, and also if there's any things you want to see during a live stream that I can talk about. That's easy enough to do. Obviously the BL Touch, I've got to make a tutorial on that. That's going to be a long one. It's going to involve this panel. There are a lot of nuances to it now, so I have to explain on here. Let me see if you can see what I'm talking about. On here, there's a way to actually set your EEPROM. You're going to have to do it through custom commands. Let me see if they're in here. They're not in here yet, but there's a save to EEPROM command here. You might have to add G codes, so I might have to change the view so you can understand what I'm doing, and that would be like right here. So I'll show you like M119. I don't know if we're going to be able to see it. Yes, we are. So it'll show you what's going on. You can type G codes directly into it. So we may have to use that to actually show you some of the functionality of the BL Touch. So that's just a heads up on what I'm trying to work on when I get more time. I think I'm caught up at work lately, so hopefully I'll have more time to show you stuff. But I just went through a busy 3 months, so I haven't been able to do a lot of work. So everyone take care, be safe, and thanks for coming over and watching for a while.